Greetings to you all in the Most High, job blessings, and Rastafari. I am Dr. W. Gabriel Selassie I, the people's historian, and as many of you will know, that I am a revolutionary historian at heart. So I have a whole slate of questions here from people, and I believe in the idea that I should be upfront with everything. You ask me questions, many people, they'll post them on YouTube or they'll send them to me in emails. So I believe, and they ask me to ask these questions, so I'll just put them out there. So I noticed that there are a number of people who have the same questions, so I just decided to do a YouTube video to ask those. And for the most part, I believe as an academic that one should be open and honest with one's sources. So let's get to it. So the number one question that I probably get from many people are twofold. And the first one is did I go to college? And the answer to that one is yes, I am a college graduate. Then they ask me, well, what did I get my college degree in? My undergraduate degree is in architecture and civil engineering. I hold a 5-year professional bachelor's of architecture degree, which then qualified me to have what we would call a minor or dual degree in civil engineering. My coursework was heavily in architecture, but also heavily in engineering. So when I graduated from college, my first job out of college was not as an architect, but as a civil engineer. So that is my sort of STEM background, where I have the least a training in architecture, so I can design buildings and etc., and also in engineering. And after this will sort of roll into the next question that I have I ever worked in the real world? And the answer to that is yes, because I, as I stated, worked as a civil engineer. I also worked as an architect for a number of years, and after practicing architecture, I ended up opening up my own historic preservation firm. That was my specialty. So at some particular point after graduating from college and working a number of years, I went and got a degree in public history and historic preservation. So what my specialty was is taking history from the academic sphere and moving that into the public sphere. So I firmly believe that history and the Ivy League, or the ivory tower, as they say, right? That information that is done by the good historians that are out there working hard, writing books, ought to at least filter its way into the public discourse. And so my first specialty outside of my undergraduate degrees was doing so. And I did a number of jobs and work all over the world in my own historic preservation firm. So yes, it's not that I've just been an academic. I have actual real world experience working as a practitioner. And so then the next question that I get a lot is what makes me an authority on the subjects that I talk about? And to the answer to that question is I really don't know what makes me an authority. I can say that I have spent a better portion of my life studying in academic settings. And the reason why I value academic settings is because there's nowhere to hide. In an academic setting, you actually have to put your thinking, your writing to scrutiny. So there will be your fellow students and those professors that are teaching the classes that are going to be challenging you at every step of the way. Now, this isn't to say that I don't believe that you can't educate yourself outside of academia. You can certainly go down to any library and for a couple of dollars, 50 cents, get a library card and read all the books in a library. The problem with that is where do you begin? What shelf do you start on, and what book do you grab first? The beauty of higher academics and higher education is that over the many centuries that academics has been built, people have been making these decisions and doing the heavy lifting for you to kind of nudge you in the right directions. And that's why I value education. And that's why, as a person of color, a person of African descent, I firmly believe in listening to the wisdom of ancestors. Ancestors have been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt, right? They've been to the puppet show, as the saying goes. And so they know from personal experience where the issues are and where you need to begin in your journey. And so this is why I believe that academics, getting into an academic setting, is really fundamentally important. Now, what sort of is my background beyond having my undergraduate or bachelor's degree? And that is that I have graduate degrees. I have a master's degree in history from the Claremont Graduate School, now Claremont Graduate University. I have a doctorate in history from the Claremont Graduate School, now Claremont Graduate University. And I also have a master's degree in African American Studies from UCLA. And here at UCLA, I studied under Robert Hill the Garvey movement. So one of my specialties is Marcus Garvey and the UNIA, with a special focus in on the religious aspects of Garveyism. So as a matter of fact, currently I'm writing a book on the African Orthodox Church, which will be out shortly. And so from that particular standpoint, you can see that I have a well-rounded education. My doctorate took me approximately about 9 years to complete, sometimes mostly going part-time, and also having to complete a oral examination, a written examination, etc. So from that particular perspective, I have sort of had my feet put to the fire. And so I wouldn't say that would necessarily make me an expert on everything. I'm always learning, always discovering new things. But what I think that an education will show is that you have some minimum competency in a particular area. So the books that I put out for you to read, the sort of the areas that I'm talking about, I have read all of these books, had in close, intense examination of the books, sat in hours-long classes, discussed with my fellow colleagues, students, and faculty members, and sometimes from the people that actually wrote those books. So I wouldn't say that, again, necessarily qualifies one to be an expert, but I think that I have done all of the heavy lifting, and I think that I have shown at least some credibility in these particular areas. The next question that I sort of get is that did I attend a historically black college? Yes, I did. My undergraduate degree was taken at Prairie View A&M University of Texas, which is about 20 minutes outside going west of Houston. And I'm very proud that my first college degree is a black degree. And I'm very proud of the fact that I went to an HBCU, because in particular Prairie View A&M University, because it does produce productive people. Now, the next question that I have I ever been to Africa? Yes, I have been to Africa. I have been all over Africa, working, living, etc. Some of my favorite places of Africa are Zimbabwe. I really love West Africa. I've spent a great deal of time in North Africa, in places like Morocco, Egypt. I really love a lot. Africa, particularly sub-Saharan Africa, is one of the best places on earth, and the people are absolutely wonderful. They may not have a lot of personal wealth, although Africa itself is rich in natural resources, but the people have personal wealth and just their overall good nature. They are very fantastic people, right? So I think that pretty much will sum up sort of these questions. And I think the last question, if I'm reading here correctly, is what mansion do I belong? So if you're unfamiliar with Rastafari, typically Rastas fold themselves into particular mansion. And what I mean by mansion is sort of branch. So there are different philosophies about how one should approach Rastafari in his own liberty. And so there is a biblical verse and that comes from the book of John that says, in my Father's house, there are many mansions or many rooms. So there are different approaches to the way that one approaches Jah. And so from that particular standpoint, there is Bobo Ashanti, there is the Nyabingi Order, 12 Tribes, Rastafari Covenant, the Church of Selassie. There are many different covenants, and I ascribe pretty much somewhere in between the Nyabingi Order and the 12 Tribes. For me, my religious upbringing in Rastafari has been a long, slow process since the 1970s, the late 1970s, when I was introduced to Bob Marley's I Shot the Sheriff, one day getting a ride home from a teacher from my high school. And so immediately when I went to college, I started to grow dreads, and then life sort of impacts one, and I was pushed towards professionalism in the military, and so you can't wear dreads, that sort of thing. And so but it was a long evolutionary process, and looking at all of the orders, and I settled somewhere in between the Nyabingi Order and the 12 Tribes. So I'm hoping that I've answered some of your questions. If you have more, shoot me more information, and I will try my best to get back to those questions. So good day to you, Jah blessings, and Rastafari.